VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. It is April 17th, which means we are 10 days away from the NFL draft. I'm joined by my friend Brett, who runs the VikingCentral account, Vikes at VikesCentral on Twitter. When I got to Twitter about 4 years ago, his account was one I gravitated toward because he had a hometown connection for me. He knows his stuff. So alas, he's on the show. How are you today, sir?
Hey, it's about time, Dustin. Love your work. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm doing marvelous. Can't wait to get started. Obviously, it's an exciting time of the year. Draft coming up. Nothing beats it. Absolutely love this time of the year.
Same here. I always say that there's really no better sports reality television because yourself and thousands of others
Yep.
on a Thursday night here in 10 days, we're going to sit on a couch or go to a bar or whatever and watch reality TV, and there's no sport being played. We're watching dudes' lives come to fruition.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works, isn't it? It just gains so much intrigue. It's a sport. Obviously, sports bring us together. And I was going to go down there this year because it's in Kansas City. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that far of a drive. It's like 6 hours. It didn't work out. So, yeah, I'm obviously going to sit on the couch or go to a bar, like you said. Um, like you said, it's just crazy how this brings people together and how we get so excited and all this speculation, all this talk, months and months leading up to this, and it goes away in a couple days, but um, that's the fun part about it. So
Yeah, I think the allure is that every single player drafted by your team in those 3 days for about the next 6 months are guaranteed to be good. In your mind, you're like, oh, yeah, Nick Muse is going to be the tight end eventually. Like, you have all these great theories, not you personally, but the whole world.
yep,
All
yep.
right, I got 5 questions for you. And the first I want to set the table is broad. So free agency hit a month ago, and
Yep.
out of the gate, bang, the Vikings signed Josh Oliver, which was a surprise for some, Byron Murphy, which is fantabulous, Marcus Davenport to hedge the bet if Zadarius Smith actually leaves. And then they decided on Cousins' contract not to extend him. They're going to
Sure.
put the money into the future and see what happens. So there was a lot of shit going on. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden we hit this grinding halt when it's like, hey guys, we still need cornerbacks. What are you doing?
Yep.
What do you think? What do you think of this offseason? Has it given you hope that they're still contenders, or hit me with it here?
Overall, I've been pretty pleased. They had to release some guys, some long tenure guys, Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen. That just had to be done. Those guys are owed a ton of money coming up, so it obviously had to be done. And that's just something this fan base, is not used to. Rick Spielman was a guy that, if you were drafted by Spielman or you're kind of a homegrown talent, you're going to stay with the Vikings. Um, and obviously, it was just time to let those guys go. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is not, he's fine with doing that. He's got to make those hard decisions, and it was time. So I'm pretty happy with that. He's kind of cleaning up Rick's mess a little bit. We didn't have a lot of salary cap to work with, but we signed some impact players with the little money that we did have. Just creating space with Cousins contract, and then a few other things. I've liked what they've done. The free agent signings, Josh Oliver was a big surprise. Especially when it was the first signing. It wasn't, later on, second wave, third wave. And he's kind of a blocking tight end, especially in the run game. And we didn't run it all that much last year. But towards the end of the year, Kevin O'Connell kind of said, "Yeah, we got to run the ball more. We got to make it easier on our passing offense, easier on Kirk, easier on our wide receivers. So we want to run the ball a little bit more." And is that going to be Dalvin Cook at the backfield? Who knows? That's another decision that
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about later on this episode. But I love the Byron Murphy signing. Very versatile guy who can play inside and outside. Having a guy like that we haven't had that can play kind of all around the secondary is going to be, a breath of fresh air. A guy that's got a lot of swagger, got a lot of tools. I think he's going to fit great with Brian Flores. And then Marcus Davenport, Mr. Half a Sack, everyone's been calling him. But, if you talk to Saints fans and you kind of look on Twitter, the guy does make a good impact on the game when he's in. It doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. But, just 2 years ago, I think he had 9 sacks, I want to say. So he has been an impact player in this league. And I think, being alongside Daniil Hunter on the other side, I think is going to be great for him. And I think he's going to do really well in the Brian Flores scheme. But overall, I really like the direction they're kind of going, kind of cleaning up the mess a little bit, trying to do as good as they can with what they have. So I'm just looking forward to what they do. I think there's still a couple signings out there yet. I could see them adding a veteran cornerback yet and stuff like that. But gonna be exciting the next few weeks to see what else we add.
Funny part is very easily, if the Vikings were in the mood like today, they could trade Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Cook, restructure Brian O'Neill's contract, and they would have like close to the most cap space in the NFL by all reasonable measures, nothing crazy. So that's what I'm counting on. You can probably designate post June 1st releases if they can't get anything for Cook or Smith. So yeah, I agree with you that I think they're going to, like most teams, see the lay of the land. Everybody right now thinks they can get the next best thing in the draft for cheap. When that doesn't happen, then you can pivot to free agency and say, hey, this guy looks pretty good. On the Josh Oliver thing, I'll tell you this little story. So for what I write at Vikings Territory, I got a couple close dudes that are always in constant communication. And one is Yannick Eckhart from Germany. And on the weekend before free agency, he and I were chatting, talking about some of our predictions and what we wanted to put out in the open space. And almost like right now with the draft, we said, well, we know for sure they don't need a tight end and they don't need an offensive tackle. And then boom, the first thing was a tight end. So I'm a little paranoid for the draft that it's going to be like a tackle that they convert to guard or some shit.
Right.
Like that.
Oh boy.
All right, man. So the draft, 10 days away. The Vikings have 5 picks right now. Most of us assume that'll balloon to about 8 after Adafa Mensah does his stuff. We shall see. Tell me your generalized wish list for the draft.
I have a lot of things in my wish list because there is a lot of needs yet on this team. We need a lot of players on the defensive side of the football. Our depth isn't great over there. So obviously I want to build up that defense a little bit. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, he's kind of an analytical guy. He kind of looks at value. So I'm not surprised he didn't sign a linebacker. I mean, he re-signed Jordan Hicks, but I'm not surprised that he didn't go right away in free agency and sign a linebacker because I feel like in this defense that Brian Flores runs, linebackers can kind of be found anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I don't see Kwesi, making that a huge need, but I do think they need to find another athletic linebacker to go along with Brian Asamoah and then veteran Jordan Hicks. So if you can find a linebacker, I don't expect it to be in the first round or anything like that, but another kind of Brian Asamoah type pick, 3rd round pick, mid rounds. So I think we do need to add more athleticism at that position. And then obviously I think they're going to go corner again at some point. I hope it's not a first round because every year it's prediction, first round corner, first round corner, first round corner. I'm kind of sick of it because none of them have really panned out. Yep. So we kind of got that PTSD from, first round corners just not panning out. But a guy that I really like is out of Utah, Clark Phillips. Mm-hmm. He's more of a slot only guy. But when's the last time we've had like a solid slot corner? Offenses always take advantage of of that spot on our defense. I think Captain Marlin's probably like our last pretty decent slot corner. And this guy's very twitchy, very fluid, very quick. He only ran like a 4.5 and at the combine, but his on-field tape is really, really good. And he's feisty. He's only about 5'9", but he kind of reminds me a little bit. I'm not gonna, compare him to Antoine Winfield or anything like that, but he's physical and he's not afraid to get in your face. And I just love that about him. So if you get him, you could probably get him at like pick 87. I don't think he's going to go before then.
Sure.
But that's another position I think we need. And then obviously the big one is quarterback and wide receiver. We do need that wide receiver too. I know there's been all these conversations on Vikings Twitter lately about that wide receiver.
Yeah, we'll call them conversations.
Yeah, right. We'll leave it at that. But I think we do need a wide receiver too, a guy that can stretch the field. KJ Osborne's really good in the intermediate. He's really good on 3rd down, but we need a guy that can stretch the field. And then if we can get our quarterback of the future, that would be great. We're not in the greatest position for that. We do have some ammo to move up if we want to do, future picks for future 1st round picks. But it sounds like Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi are only going to do that if they're absolutely in love with a guy. I don't know if they're really in love with anyone. They preach accuracy. Anthony Richardson, if he falls a little bit, he's not the most accurate quarterback. He's got all the tools in the world, but I don't know if we mortgage our future on that. But a cornerback, a linebacker, keep building that defense, add some depth on the defensive line, get an explosive wide receiver too, and figure out our quarterback of the future. Obviously, probably not all that's going to happen, but if we can, get a majority of those things pinned down, that'd be great.
I think they can do a lot of that checklist if he trades back like he did last year and accrues capital. Now,
Yep.
at that press conference that you kind of mentioned where they talked about what their opinion is getting the quarterback where it's ideal but not required. He seemed to say that he was looking for an impact player, but I'm going to guess he's going to get up to his old tricks that he can just trade down and stockpile dudes. So the one thing you said about cornerback, you know how every draft show of every podcast for the Vikings in the last 8-9 years is which cornerback are we going to get? The only difference this year is nobody's mad about it. Last year or the years before, we used to roll our eyes because we thought it was a Zimmer fetish, and now we're like, well, we don't have any. So we got one for sure. Booth and Evans, we hope pan out. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook. It seems with his $14.1 million cap hit on the way. They re-signed Alexander Madison. They have Ty Chandler in the chamber. They got Kene and Wangu if they ever want to get funky with speed. It seems like he's on his way out. Now, recent days have said maybe a release. I would prefer a trade. I think all fans were. But where does that man, Cookie, play football in September?
This is probably like your stereotypical spot, but I'm still looking at Miami.
Okay.
It just makes so much sense. I know they got
hometown.
I know they signed Raheem Mostert, and I think they re-signed Jeff Wilson too. So they got some backs over there, but I think Mike McDaniel. I think he'd use Dalvin Cook to the best of his ability, and his current contract. He's only got one more year left on it. So if it doesn't work out, they just move on from him after 2023. But I just think Miami makes a ton of sense. He's from there, and that's somewhere he'd want to go. And I'm guessing he's probably told his agent, if I'm not going to be in Minnesota, Miami's probably my number one destination. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I don't expect him on the roster. It's just leaning that way. Some clips with his agent Zach Hiller. It doesn't seem like he's too happy with Minnesota at all. I don't know if Dalvin's happy with the situation or not, but agents speak. They're kind of all, excuse my French, jackasses. That's just the way they are. But I expect him to be in Miami or somewhere else. But Miami's my prediction for Dalvin Cook. And if we could fetch even a fifth or sixth, that'd be great. And then just outright releasing him. And I think the closer the draft comes, I think that talk could pick up a little bit. Maybe getting a day 3 late round pick for Dalvin Cook. And I think majority of us would be pretty happy with that situation.
Everything I just said, but apply it to Zadarius Smith.
Yeah. As Zadarius Smith is a little trickier because, what was this, a month or so ago, right as free agency was hitting. Thank you, Minnesota. Thank you for a great time. And then literally 10 minutes later, like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Zadarius Smith wants out, but Minnesota says no. So it's kind of been just a guessing game with him. We have no leverage in that situation there, so I don't expect a draft pick from Zadarius Smith if we attempt to trade him. I guess it's probably just a flat out release. And we did owe him some guarantee money here a few weeks ago, so I don't know why we didn't release him a few weeks ago to save a little bit more cap space, but I'm guessing they're trying to, bandage the relationship up a little bit and trying to see what they can do with them. But it's hard to see him on the roster after all that whole situation at the beginning of free agency. So I could see him going to the Patriots or something alongside Matthew Judon. It just kind of seems like a Bill Belichick signing, a guy that, still has some gas left in the tank who can make an impact right away, a veteran presence in that defense. So.
Yeah, when you said that thing about the guaranteed, the $2 million or whatever that solidified against the cap, it kind of reminded me of the Dalvin Tomlinson situation when they bought more time to maybe get him back, but then bada bing, he got 4 years, $57 million in Cleveland, which is probably too much for any team to spend on a run stuffer in the middle, but all the power to him. Yep. So when you went through your draft wish list, I couldn't get a drop on your feelings about what you want as a quarterback. So my original question in this spot was, give me your favorite non-first round quarterback for the Vikings to draft. I'm going to twist this up a little bit. Give
Yeah.
me the favorite realistic quarterback, or even if you want to get super funky and sexy and trade up to 3 to get somebody, what ideally to prepare for life after Cousins would general manager Brett do for these Vikings?
Now there has been some talk about the Vikings moving up to 3. I don't know how real that talk is or anything like that. Who would you target? CJ Stroud. Do you really like Anthony Richardson? I don't think I would mortgage my future on Anthony Richardson. Now that much, I wouldn't move all the way up to 3. Now if he falls to like 15 or 16, and we only have to give up like maybe one future first to get him. Now we're talking a little bit more, but to move up to 3 for Richardson, no. Now CJ Stroud, I think he's pretty polished, and the ability to sit behind Kirk maybe for a year. Ohio State quarterbacks still kind of scare me. I know that's another stereotypical comment from me, but it's hard to get past that. But I think CJ Stroud's probably the most pro ready quarterback in this entire draft. So if you wanted to move up, now that's a huge jump. That's 20 spots. You're probably gonna have to give up like 2, maybe 3 first rounders, and then some 2023 draft capital. But now my realistic and want out of this is Will Levis or Anthony Richardson falling out of the top 12 or so.
Okay.
Then moving up, maybe just giving up a future first and a little bit more capital. You'll get one of those guys. Now I'm higher on Levis more than most people. I think the guy has a command of the offense. He's got good confidence about himself. He can make all the throws. His pocket presence isn't great, but a lot of college quarterbacks, their pocket presence isn't that great. I think KO could coach him up. And there's also been kind of differing reports about Will Levis as well. Oh, Kevin O'Connell really likes him, and now it's kind of like Kevin O'Connell doesn't really like him. It's all that draft speak, smoke screens. It's that type of the year or time of the year. So I think if one of those guys fall, I think that's the kind of the move that I would like them to make. But if they don't fall, I don't want us reaching at 23, or even if we move back to like pick 30 or 31. I know there's been Hendon Hooker talk, but if we can move back to like the middle of the second round, towards the end of the second round, early third round, if he's still there, you go for it. Hendon Hooker would be a good selection in that area. But if I could see Will Levis or Anthony Richardson falling out into the teens, maybe I would have no problem with them moving up because it won't take a lot of capital. And then your previous question, or the question you were going to ask me, one of my late round guys that I really like, Jaren Hall out of BYU.
Okay.
I know some people that go to college BYU and they absolutely love Jaren Hall. He's like the coolest dude, they say. Just has so much character, confidence about himself. He can make a lot of throws. He doesn't have the best arm strength, and he's a little smaller in size. I think he's like 6'1", but he's a field general. Like he can command an offense. He can make all the throw, high football IQ, and you probably don't have to go after him until like round 4 or 5. Obviously, I think they're going to try to make a move in the earlier rounds, but if they don't, I could see Jaren Hall being a selection. And his parents were absolute athletes. His mom was a gymnast. His dad was a football player. So that's a guy in the later rounds that I would really like. But if I could see one of those, quarterback essentially 3 or 4 after Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, if they fall, I would have no problem with the Vikings moving up and going after one of those guys.
Jaren Hall's 6'1" would tower over Bryce Young for anybody that cares. Also, ESPN had an article last week. I don't know if you read it, with executives and scouts doing comps, and like the only one for Jaren Hall, most of the dudes had like 3, was Russell Wilson. And I was like, we'll sign us the hell up if that's a sure thing. We'll take the good first 10 years of Russell Wilson for our 10 years. I think what you're talking about, Richardson or Levis starting to tumble the board. I think the realistic spot you'd have to get in front of Tampa Bay, I think it's 17 or 18, and all that would really cost would be your 23rd pick and then like a 3rd rounder. Whereas if they had the notion to go up to the Cardinal spot and get Stroud, I think it's 3 first rounders and a 3rd, and then that's assuming nobody else is bidding, which is probably a long shot.
Yeah, I could see Tennessee probably making maybe, depending on what they think of Malik Willis. I mean, he was only a 3rd round pick, so if you need move on from him. It's not that big a deal, but I could see Tennessee making a move up to number 3 for a quarterback. Yeah.
I'm with you on
Yeah.
Levis. So I think my ideal scenario is that his recent tumble kind of would go all the way to the Vikings, and you don't have to spend a damn thing other than your organic pick. The
Yeah.
only reason, and I would get behind the pick 100% and then assume that it will work out because Kevin O'Connell's
Right.
in the saddle. But the only here's why I don't care about mayonnaise in the coffee or the alleged immaturity. I don't care about any of that. The only thing that I care about is through draft histrionics in the first round. When there's like 4 guys like this, 2 of them are guaranteed to be meh or not good. And you start to look at, God, who's that going to be? And usually I end up with Levis and Richardson because
Yeah.
I can't get over the fact that Richardson has the lowest completion percentage of any first round quarterback
No.
outside of Kyle Bowler or Ryan Leaf, or who is the other one? Jake Locker. So somehow Richardson's just going to be the guy that's the unicorn, which everybody thinks he is. So that's why my Levis, I'm a little like, oh boy, don't trade too much for him because this is like it's like a science that 2 of these 4 aren't going to be very good, and I'm paranoid that one of them might be Levis.
Yeah, I could see that. That's just the way the NFL draft works.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're selecting first round, you take quarterback. We figured that out with Christian Ponder pretty easily, and that was a major reach. You know, Rick Spielman, one of his first years as GM, just kind of wanted his quarterback, and he just reached so hard for Christian Ponder. And I think Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi aren't going to do that. I don't think they're going to reach. And I know, Kwesi came from a Wall Street background, so he's used to risk. So he's looking for that high risk, high reward type of player. So, one of those guys could be, Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, or like we talked about before, maybe they do move up to number 3. But I could see them really pushing hard for their quarterback the future in first round, just because of Kirk Cousins. The surprise last year here, and he's 35 years old. So, I think they're ready to make a move. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they move up. We just don't want them to make that, dumb reach or, give up the house for a guy that could be, a bust. But
Yep,
that's
and
the way it goes.
they've got this golden opportunity as a franchise to roll with Cousins, who we know at the very bottom floor, the team's going to go 8-9. And we don't think it'll be quite that mediocre. But he's going to throw 4,200 yards. He's going to throw 30 touchdown passes. And you can have whoever you want, your guy, marinating for 1 year, just like the Packers did it, just like the Chiefs did it. And this doesn't come along very often. If they wait, they don't have that. They're going to have Nick Mullins as a patch over, or some other asshole. And then you're just like, all right, well, let's hope that blah, blah, blah from the 2024 draft is better than all the rest.
Exactly. And then, Dustin, I don't know if you saw this. I just got a notification. Daniil Hunter will not attend Vikings voluntary program.
Oh, really?
Nope. So he's looking for a new deal. So that could be that's another.
Yeah, that one. Let's see. When did that start? Was it 2019 or 2020? One of those off seasons it started where he was a little peeved by the team friendly deal because it was really weird when Spielman inked him to that what felt like a big contract at the time is like the moment that he blossomed into a top 7, top 5 edge rusher. And every offseason we have this drama. Now, it sucks for him. It's been thwarted by injury concerns. Can he still be dominant? Well, last year he played all 17 games, got acclimated to 3-4. So yeah, that one, of course, makes me roll my eyes, but it doesn't surprise me because I'm sure he's looking finally for a real man's extension rather than the team friendly that he had with Rick.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why he was so upset about. I mean, his eight that's the contract him and his agent came up with. So he kind of dug his own hole there. But I think he did fire his representation from that contract anyway. So he's got new representation. But yeah, I think he's 29 years old. So I think he'd be really good.
29.
Yeah, I think he'd be really good in the Brian Flores system. But we're kind of looking for younger players. That's kind of been our motto in free agency. Do you think Kwesi would look at maybe a trade to gain some more draft capital there? It's going to be another interesting situation to kind of look at.
Yeah,
as well. But
I think Flores wants him because why
Yeah.
would you take a job and you strip away your best player?
Right.
And I don't think this contract news will be a curveball to anybody there. So I'm going to guess it gets resolved because he still, as an edge rusher, has anywhere between 2 and 5 good years left.
Yep.
But now if they have that kumbaya with Za'Darius, then you have Davenport, and then you also have Patrick Jones who look decent. Plus, you could spend a blah 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 rounder on an edge rusher. Yeah, and then who knows what Hunter could fetch on the trade market. But I'm gonna guess that they actually give him a decent contract because, like we talked about, 20 minutes ago, they can free up cap space with a snap of two fingers, and then this that really wouldn't impact too much of 2023 in the first place. It would be just projecting it down the road.
I agree with you. Yep.
All right, final question. This is my favorite question I'm going to ask of every guest for the next 10 days. Everybody likes to be right, and this one is notoriously tricky to put your finger on because you don't know if the Vikings are going to trade up and get the next Kirk. You don't know if they're going to trade back like the MO says or just stay put for once. So I'm going to ask you right now, with whatever situation you personally foresee, predict the Vikings' first pick, wherever that's at, on Thursday night, or God forbid it gets into Friday night.
And it could get into Friday night, unfortunately. But that's how you gain more draft capital. No, I could be fun. I could be reckless. Oh, Vikings are going to move up, go get a quarterback. The board's going to have to play out pretty well for them to do that. And I think the first 3 picks could be quarterback. I know there's been some talk Houston might not take a quarterback at number 2. But they could. I think they have a pick later on too that they could make for a quarterback. But I'm not going to predict them taking a quarterback in the first round. So I think me and you agree with this. I think Quasi is going to trade back, gain some more draft capital, maybe another third, an additional third or something like that, or maybe even a second, depending on what he can do. But I could see Quasi trading back, and then this is a guy that didn't even get invited to the draft because there's been some talk that he might fall out of the second round, but I think he would fit or out of the first round, excuse me. I think he could fit really well into this Vikings offense alongside Justin Jefferson. I'm going to go Quentin Johnston out of TCU, a guy that can stretch the field, big body guy, 6'4", can high point the football. We haven't had a guy like that since like Sidney Rice that can get up and go get the football. I mean, Justin Jefferson can do it, but he can pretty much do everything, route run, go get the ball. But I think Quentin Johnston would be a great fit for this offense alongside Justin Jefferson. Push back KJ Osborne, who's a great wide receiver. It's a wide receiver number 3, and I think he'd be ready day one to make an impact. So I could really see Kevin O'Connell really loving that pick. Just add another weapon to this offense to take some pressure off Justin Jefferson.
So that is your predictive. That's what you think will happen. And
Yep.
then if you were the general manager, putting you on the spot, who would it be? Stay put or get who?
I would move back, for sure. Move back, and then I don't know if Quentin Johnston's my favorite wide receiver in this draft. Depending on how the board plays out at 23, if a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, I don't think he's going to be there at all. He's probably going to be gone before pick 15. But if he somehow falls, because this is the same conversation, Justin Jefferson. Oh, he's a slot only guy coming out of the 2020 draft. If he somehow falls, that's my pick, and I'm really leaning towards wide receiver here.
Okay.
I would like maybe some defensive line too. Brian Brise out of Clemson, I think would fit really well. My personal want is Zay Flowers out of State. Wide receiver I really like that has a pretty good route tree, explosive guy. I think Kevin O'Connell could do wonders with him, jet sweeps, a guy that can get down the field as well. A guy that can just move the chains, who's really explosive, and then I think has probably the most potential out of any wide receiver in this draft class, in my opinion.
And would you nab him at 23?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, Brett, your maiden voyage. I appreciate it, sir. Why don't you look at your schedule for the week after the draft, which would be about April 30th. So about 2 weeks from today or something. And let me know when you're available so we can decompress this draft class and see what we like and dislike. All right, sir?
I'm thinking it's an exciting time. I really appreciate it, Dustin. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll for sure hop on again.
Oh, hell yeah, man. All right, we'll talk to you in about 2 weeks. All right?
All right. Thanks, Dustin.
Later.